Vlog on a blog. Tomorrow's news today. Get to the truth. Listen, learn, live. Visit us at yadayah.com.
Hey, it's Noah to Noah. I don't know if you're going to pick up on the subtlety of that, but it is an ancient Noah to a modern Noah.
Only in name. Only in name.
Okay.
You have the real deal. I'm just the name.
Yeah. It's. I'm not sure that having the real deal there was much of a good thing. That was a tough gig. Well, it's good to see you. I understand that you and two other fellas, a mathematician and an artist, are going to start a new show. You've kind of got your introduction to it, and it should be interesting. So, what happens when three fellas like that walk into a bar?
Isn't that yeah? I was chit-chatting with Kirk, and he had just mentioned in passing. It sounds like we got a show. We got a painter, a musician,
Mm-hmm.
and a mathematician, and I just couldn't help but thinking that's the beginning of a joke, isn't it, Kirk?
Actually, even a vintner. So you could go right into
That's right. Yeah,
sounds great. So you guys been talking about how you're going to proceed, because I understand it's going to be a fairly technical show. You're going to take a approach towards understanding the lexicon and the grammar of Hebrew and try to get into some of the nuts and bolts of it, because it's the details that ultimately tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to lean heavily on some of the work that Perry's been doing, which has been marvelous. He had done some great work originally on Rumble. I don't know how many Covenant members were able to see that, or hear it, really listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was taking the phonetic sound of pictograph Hebrew and presenting it in musical form. And I think we're going to rely heavily on that and work around that. I know his idea for the first show, we're going to kind of get into some of the basics, especially with the 5 conditions, and start there, which is a great starting place. I think it's really the essential.
He wants the Hebrew language to make sense and to be rules based, as opposed to like every other language today, where there are more exceptions than there are consistencies. So since there are 5 vowel sounds that we can form, and there are 5 vowels in Hebrew, he simply wants each of the 5 vowels to have a consistent sound. And it's his thought that since the language went dormant for many centuries, the modern Hebrew really isn't a direct copy of the Hebrew of the Torah and prophets, and that in between those things you had the language was tormented by the Masoretes, the rabbis, who used their Shoah system, which means to mislead and to perpetrate a fraud, to do that very thing. And with their diacritical markings on a language that already had 5 vowels, they tried to shift the language to convey what they wanted it to say, as opposed to what it actually said. And they defrauded the people tremendously. And then rabbis went and just began to replace letters. If there's the TS, they replaced it with a Z. If there's a WA, they replaced it with a V. Sometimes they had a B, and sometimes they replaced it with a V there as well. They just destroyed the original language. And so his goal as a mathematician, so long as you're not dealing with calculus, which is the math of Beth guesses, there are right and wrong answers, and that's what he wants. He wants to take the language back to right and incorrect sounds. And I think it's an great. Interesting. It's an interesting study. It's certainly going to be thoughtful in this regard. It's a little bit like our superscript project right now, where I'm every one of the new books that I add, like these 3 that are currently doing, they're all written with the superscript, so if it's the Ain or the Aleph that is making that particular sound. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting.
I think it's great, and we have Kirk with his analysis of the pictograph, his artist presentation, his artist mind,
Yes.
can bring a lot out of the letters themselves, just themselves. So
I would say
great.
that Perry, other than the Covenant, Perry and Kirk would have probably the least in common of two people, other than just a love of Yahweh and the overall covenant. There are, one has a mathematical approach to everything, and it's rigid and formulaic, and the other one sees the worlds in shades and hues and from various perspectives. So
and not necessarily from social media or a computer.
Yeah, it really is. One actually tames computers and has a computer here in our home that we call the Beast, and the other is allergic to them.
So it should be an interesting show. There's an interesting dichotomy there.
It is. And that's what we wanted. We wanted some tension in the personalities, and tension's a good thing. When you have a different perspective on things. All right. So you wanted to also talk a little bit about what you're perceiving is happening with this Iranian conflict before we begin the vlog on the vlog. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it just seems evident to me now that it's expanding. It's expanding probably at an exponential rate now at this point. And I think it's expanding at a rate that Rahab, he's obviously completely lost. I mean, he's just complete. It's done. It's done. And I think that we're in for, I don't know how long it's before it gets, but it's expanding to a point where I think Americans are going to start feeling it, at some point somewhere.
What Noah's saying here is that Donald Trump is the person that the prophets referred to as Rahab. Rahab is the incarnation of Satan. He's an egomaniacal, gross narcissist who is also a psychopath, bent on death and destruction of the world. He is the person that has been the subject of much speculation as to when this demon possessed individual would come and wreak such havoc in the world. And we identified Donald Trump as that demon, literally a Satan incarnate, going back more than 2 years ago now. And so we've used all manner of prophetic testimony to prove it. And then, of course, in every way since then, he has demonstrated that the conclusion is accurate. And in fact, it's so obvious that it's really amazing that there are any supporters of Donald Trump left. And of course, the only ones who are supporters are Twistians. They're Christian MAGA, and that's it. And so they're already prone to believe make-believe messiahs and make-believe gods. So it's naturally prone to believe that, well, Trump could be their make-believe messiah and God. And it's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
Now, as it relates go ahead.
Oh, I just say we have two straits now that are completely kaput. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz, and then so it's just if we don't see the effects at the oil pump soon, it would be surprising to me. I mean, I know we already have been, but it's got to get worse. I mean, it's just
Bab Madab is the strait in the Red Sea, and it has become problematic on two sides. One is that the Somalian Muslims are back hijacking ships. They have hijacked two recently, and that's you're not going to get insurance to cover that, and that's a real risk. And of course, then the Saudis, MBS is really flailing. He is right now a very dangerous man because he's gone from having cultivated a world around him buying Trump. I mean, he purchased Trump, bribed him, purchased him, owned him, and now this whole thing is blown him out of the water where all he can do is hide. And it's shown that it doesn't matter how many billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons that Saudi Arabia buys from America, they have nobody to use them. And so they're just patsies. And we're witnessing that happening now to Saudi Arabia, which makes MBS look like an impotent fool. And that's really hard on a narcissist. And he's also a narcissist and psychopath. So that's a really scary situation. And then you've got the fact that you are right. The whole thing has expanded. And what's interesting is that the West is getting played. When Iran, Qatar, Sinwar, and others associated with Hamas decided that they would perpetrate Alaska Flood, which is the official title for what happened on 10/7 in Israel, with the Muslims in tennis shoes running out of Gaza and bludgeoning 1,200 Jews to death and taking some 250 captive, raping many. It was a typical Muslim attack, very similar to what they did with Muhammad 1,400 years earlier with Kabar. That's why they shout Yahud Kabar. That what the purpose of that is what the Iranians are pursuing now. It wasn't to destroy Israel. It wasn't to occupy Israel. It was to bloody the nose of Israel to the extent that Israel would be so mad that it would lash out by destroying Gaza. And people may not be able to process that, but that's the bottom line in all of this. Alaska Flood was specifically designed to taunt Israel into destroying Gaza, which is exactly what they did. And Qatar and Iran, as well as Hamas and the Marxists that they play with, had already begun to shout genocide and apartheid against Israel before Israel even responded. It was all set up in advance. It was all coordinated in advance, knowing that if Israel did what Hamas was taunting them into doing, which was destroying Gaza, that the whole world would turn on Israel. They knew that Israel, because of the way that they are incapable of making the lives that have been taken count, and which is a really important point that I made up very early in this. In fact, the morning of 10/7 of 23, I said, Israel, your tendency is to just say, may their memory be a blessing, and you never show what actually happened because you're afraid of the added harm that it will cause extended family members. But if you take that approach, your loved ones will have died for nothing. And you will lose the propaganda war that is going to emerge now. And the war of public opinion is going to be a bigger deal for you than any other battle you're ever going to fight. And so you need to have documented everything. You have to have 1,000 photographers out there, and every medical report, every investigation has to be fully disclosed and fully public. And you need to blast the world with what happened on this day, and they didn't. And when they didn't, then all the world saw was the destruction of Gaza. And with the destruction of Gaza, Israel was painted as genocidal and as opposing a apartheid status. And so they lost the war of public opinion, and there's not a country in the world that stands with Israel anymore. And the only one that did previously of any consequence was the United States, and they've lost the United States. So Israel was literally played into doing what it did in Gaza. That was the entire intent. Now I'm here to tell you, the only reason that Iran kept its nuclear program such that they had refined all of the uranium necessary for a full arsenal of nuclear bombs and had all the rocketry and missiles to deliver it, and kept it at the 60 percentile and didn't actually make their bomb, is they wanted to taunt Israel and the United States into doing exactly what they did. They taunted them into it. They played a game. They were taunting America to do this. And you might say, why would they do this? Because by America having done this, it puts Iran in a very unique position. It makes them the hegemon of the Middle East. Mm. It destroys their rivals, which would be the dictators of the states with flags of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait. It cuts them down to shreds, and those were America's petrodollar allies. It destroys them. And it puts them as subservient to Iran. And it created a scenario where Iran went from one of the most hated countries in the world to now 80% of the world's rooting for Iran in this war.
Yeah.
And so when they had two agreements that Trump agreed to, both of them, both of which were tantamount to surrender for the United States, one of which Trump signed at Versailles. And then they knew for certain that Trump would violate the agreement because his ego couldn't handle the fact that that was a surrender agreement. And so when Trump violated it by taking vessels through the straits close to Oman and ignoring the actual document which says that Iran controls all passage of ships through the strait, they fired at those ships knowing what the U.S. was going to do. They'd start the war all over again. They knew the U.S. was running out of interceptors, which means no interceptors for the Arab fiefdoms. They knew that their ships were now vulnerable. They knew they're running out of munitions. There's only so much they could do to Iran. And they knew that with every blow, Iran grew stronger and stronger and stronger. And so now it's openly taunting Trump. Arachi the other day held out his cell phone with all of the calls that he didn't answer from Marco Rubio, saying that no, we're not the ones begging. They're the ones begging. Right. Well, everything that Trump says is a lie.
There's also been this cultural shift in this attitude of victim status being untouchable. Okay. Iran has played that, being the one that has been beaten up and had the sanction very well. Now, the Ukraine stole victim status from Russia, because people forget that the whole reason that Russia even went into Ukraine was to stop the murder and rape of those ethnic Russians in the Donbass Oblast. And so the true victims were the Russians in those areas, that were.
And it was the Russians who had the popularly elected government of Ukraine that was pro-Russian, overturned by the United States violently in a revolution. And then it was the United States with John McCain and Lindsey Graham that are on video going to Ukraine long before the war, telling the Ukraine that we'll arm you to the teeth. Your war will be our war. We will give you weapons for as long as you need. This is the greatest deal ever in the history of America. We give you weapons, you go kill Russians. It's America's war. And so Ukraine plays on social media the victim status, and they play it reasonably well, even though they're the ones that are doing what Ukrainians have always done, skimming money and snorting cocaine. While playing the role of Nazi, while the Russians are actually defending their own people. And the Ukraine that they claim, that invaded Ukraine, that wasn't Ukraine. I mean, you go back in history and look at Ukraine, and the part that Russia's in now is Russian. So that was an example of Russia did a really crappy job of managing the war of public opinion. Ukraine lied through their teeth, but they had the U.S. CIA helping them lie. And the same thing is true now with Iran, except Iran actually is the victim.
Yeah.
And Iran has maintained the victim status because Iran never escalates without a cause. You do this, we do that. You do that, we do the other thing. And so it's always in response to the U.S. And by being measured in this regard, Iran maintains the victim status, and America comes across as a victimizer. And in a matter of a year's time, Iran has gone from one of the most despised nations in the world to one of the most appreciated. And the United States has gone from one of the most respected nations in the world to the least respected and the most hated. And the same thing is true with Israel. Both the United States and Israel got played. All right, sir, let's go to the vlog on the vlog, shall we? This is my X account. This is what Grok thought it was appropriate to send me on X. And so the purpose of this show is for me to chastise Grok, chastise X, and chastise all of the rubbish that's being sent. You're going to have that down a little bit because you're not able to see enough of it to to make it work for us. There you go. Well, I guess the top of the post is cut off. That guy in the easy chair that's smoking his cigar is management. There you go. Okay, yeah, and there you go. And the poor employee, he's making all the bucks for the manager, and he's getting nothing himself. Isn't that's such a shame? Sarah is a socialist. She's Marxist. And Marxists are really clueless as it relates to business, which is why there's, never been a successful socialist government, ever. Not one, ever. All they do is destroy wealth and cause everybody to live in shared poverty. And they turn what had been employees that were free to work wherever they wanted to work into slaves of the state. And so the accurate depiction is, having been an entrepreneur and having spent much of my life around entrepreneurs, I can tell you without exception, the entrepreneur is the hardest working person in his company. I worked 100 hours a week, 100 hours a day. No, 100 hours a week, excuse me. It's from 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 100 hours a week. And I did so in all my businesses. And initially you make about $1 an hour. Yeah. And then once you go, past the making $1 an hour, because all you're doing is putting sweat equity into your business, then you go to funding everybody else. So you're paying that employee out of your own pocket.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's not
just
paying
ask
you.
any business. Yep. Just ask any small business owner. Yep.
Right. You've built a winery. You know exactly how this works. I've built many businesses, and I can tell you that I outworked every one of my employees in every business. Without exception. I set the example of being the first in, the last out, and I was the guy when times were tough that made payroll out of his own pocket. Yep. So the depiction is the antithesis of what this little turd is presenting. And if she got her way, there would be no profit, there would be no industry, there would be no productivity, and that employee wouldn't be a free will employee. He would turn into a slave of the state. It's not only the utter stupidity of not understanding economics and how business is run and having no personal experience and just being able to say, true, how sad. These people are a danger to themselves and to the world because they're influencing a generation that is really too stupid to have any appreciation of what happened the last time we played this game. Hitler was a socialist. So was Lenin and Stalin. So was Mao Zedong. Look what happened. 250 million people died. Most of them starved to death. Yeah. And there is no successful communist country from an economic point of view. Because even China, while it is communist at its leadership and at a government point of view, became successful economically through free enterprise zones. Business in China is freer by a huge shot than it is in America. And then so they'll claim, oh, look at Sweden. Sweden is socialistic and it has a wonderful standard of living. No, it's not. In fact, business in Sweden is less regulated than it is in the United States. It's taxed far less than it is in the United States. And Sweden has far more respect for property rights and individual corporate rights than is prevalent in the United States. No, Sweden is a champion of free enterprise. Sweden went for a period for about a decade where they say, well, let's try and see if we can socialize this free enterprise system and we'll mold it to something we might like better. And they did that for about 10 years and damn near bankrupted the country, had nothing to show for it but poverty. And so they reversed all of those plans. So Sweden is proof that socialism doesn't work.
I have a bit of a different take on this picture because the idea is that this is capitalism, right? That's her point here. And that's not necessarily so, because if you notice up here, it says management. And what does one thing that the communists really do well is there's a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of managers that don't have skin. And that's the guy that's sitting on his butt here, right?
Yes.
Is those
Nothing,
the big bosses,
going for it.
the big bosses.
And I mean, the whole concept of the all the little people that are underpaid, that are working and sweating while the big boss is smoking his cigar. That is nothing like the businesses that I have been part of, and the businesses that I've been part of, anywhere from sole proprietorships up to many thousands of employees. None of them work that way. And it was a good long time where I had the opportunity to meet the captains of industry. I mean, the most famous businessmen in America. I have spent quality one-on-one time with most all of them. And what I found is we're all the same. We all outwork anyone who works with us. And we would always view those who are employees as working with us, not for us.
Yeah. I spent 10 years cattle ranching with my dad in Northern California. And you want to see some of the hardest working small business owners just work with a cattle rancher, up at dawn, going to bed late nights. Trying, it's
ranchers and farmers, tough work and high risk work, because you could put in an entire year's work on your cattle ranch or and on a farm and have nothing to show for it at the end of the year.
Nothing. Yeah. I spent many days gathering, helping other ranchers, heads of ranches, gather cows, bring them in, brand, hay. Communities come together, especially in ranching communities, and what this is representing here is not anything like what.
Yeah, it's a socialist tard. It's somebody that, you could say that she is a retard, but I don't know where she came from to be a retard, and I could call her a half tard, but I wouldn't give her that much credit. So maybe she's just a complete tard.
Yeah.
The other thing that is lost on this is this magic little machine here, that it isn't called a profit. That magic machine is called business. The stuff that comes at the end is profit, but someone had to make that machine. That machine just didn't pop out of nowhere, right?
Profit doesn't come out. Profit doesn't come out the machine. In business, you have to conceive a product that is unique. Then you have to figure out a way to fund the development of that product. And then you have to hire the people to make that product. And then you have to come up with the tooling to make that product. And then you have to market and sell that product. And you have to do so in a manner that you're creating such value that you can offer that product at a price that's appealing to people, such that it is still greater than the price that it costs to make that product. And so what comes out of the machine of business is that product. This has all of these light bulbs and ideas. The employee doesn't have the light bulb. He's not the idea guy. If he was, he'd be in the owner's chair. And it isn't time that goes into that machine. And it's time. Time is not the generator of profit. It's ideas well executed, and the execution requires to make. Typically you got to make 1,000 right decisions, and you can't get many of them, if any of them, wrong. And what comes out is a product that people want to buy, not money.
And as a business owner, you're constantly fighting against everyone with their hand out, especially government. So taxes, levies, fees, fines.
Oh, yes.
You name it. I mean, good luck.
You're responsible for your employees' health care. You're responsible for their retirement. You're responsible to train them. And if they act against the training, you're responsible for their bad behavior. And then if you say this employee is not working, you can't fire them. No, it's such a mess. It's why America has become too socialistic to be a manufacturer anymore. It's the numbskulls like Sarah here that have destroyed America's ability to make anything, and we just don't anymore. And so you have to go to a country that values free enterprise, like China. Whoever thought that China would be the one that values free enterprise, but they're the ones.
Yeah.
I think Jack Welch and GE is the finest example of how you ruin a company, where he turned it into everything is based on shareholder value.
Yeah, I knew Jack Welch. I've met him. Unfortunately, I also met his biographer, who was a real scoundrel. And he was a person that I really disliked. I met a lot of entrepreneurs and really successful captains of industry. He was the worst that I met, egomaniacal. And what he did is he didn't want to make products. GE was an industrial company until he took over the management of it, and he figured there was an easier way to create shareholder value, to create the impression of earnings per share, and that was through GE Capital. And so he made GE Capital the driving force of the value of GE, as opposed to GE making things like, locomotives and jet engines and things of that nature, and light bulbs and appliances. He destroyed the manufacturing aspects of GE to make money with a shell game, playing with money, and it almost destroyed the company to the point where it's essentially a shell of itself. It's sold off almost everything, such that the only meaningful manufacturing aspect of GE now is their jet engine division, and it's unable now to develop a new engine. The only one they're playing with is a government subsidy, which is the variable fan engine, where you have a variable bypass ratio for the military, because a lot of people don't like the fact that I've been right on this for 20 years. But the problem of America is we invested in all this money in aircraft carriers, and an aircraft carrier can't survive closer to 1,000 miles from any industrialized foe because of surface-to-ship missiles have that kind of range, and the aircraft on the aircraft carrier can't do a 2,000-mile round trip, so you can't use them. So you can only park an aircraft carrier off a third world country, or a country without much ability to support itself. So the only solution to that was the variable bypass engine, which GE and Pratt are trying to develop for the U.S. government. But that's really the only engine. They are otherwise too big a pickle to, and that's right. The reason why there really isn't a new airplane, or even thought of a new airplane on the market, is that Boeing has trashed its reputation, and so they can't develop a new airplane, and it's too expensive to develop a new engine, and the engines are what drive new airplanes. So yeah, GE is a real mess, and I don't think they'll ever straighten it out.
Craig, you wrote a great book called "In the Company, Good and Evil." Do you think there comes a point in a business's lifespan where shareholders end up just kicking the idea, the guy that figured the business out, he just ends up getting kicked out in favor of money?
I've taken several companies public, and it is running a public company is nothing like being an entrepreneur and driving your business, because as an entrepreneur, you know the health of your business, you know the finances of your business. You don't even need to see a pro forma. You just know it. It's part of your very being. You're so in touch with it. And when you take a company public, you are playing in the GAAP rules, generally accepted accounting practices of make-believe, where inventory and things of this nature are burdened. And under that basis, it creates the illusion of profitability where there is none. And you can run into a position where you don't even know your company's dead, and it is dead. Right. And the problem, I think, too, with public companies is this quarterly report card, which is really a bad idea, as opposed to your annual tax filing, and then the generally accepted accounting practices, which destroy any real awareness of what the health of the business is, and being able to amortize things, like to create the notion that Starlink for SpaceX is profitable because they can amortize those satellites over 20 years when they have a 4-year life. So it creates the impression of something that's viable when it's really not viable. But the other issue is that to have a public company, you have to have a board of directors. And that board of directors can choose to hire and fire a CEO. And just because you are the leading shareholder, the board of directors can overrule what you want to do. And they know less than 1/100th of 1% of what you know about the business. And so the people that have been put there for the protection of the shareholder are actually the ones that are the most damaging to the business. And so shareholder revolt is quite common, and it is exceedingly disruptive. Now, that book that I wrote was really an important milestone in my life. It was called In the Company of Good and Evil. You can see it. You can read the whole thing free at Yahowah.com. It's the last book on the list at Yahowah.com. And I wrote it with my best friend at the time, one of my two best friends at the time. He has since passed away. He was either the second or third employee of this company, and he was the one after I found myself having resigned the company because I had a board that believed people that I had hired that turned out to be really dishonest, and they just flat out lied to the board, and the board chose to believe the lie at a time where I was in a position to revolutionize e-commerce. And I had a plan, and not only did I have a plan, I had the largest companies in America having agreed to that plan, including Citibank, where the reward system for your credit card would be in this e-commerce store that I was creating and had created, and that every affinity, every charity that you like, your university, whatever it is that you identify with, would have a custom store specifically for you that makes contributions to what you care about. And so you have to do no advertising, and it creates environments where people can congregate in an inventoryless model. And I had won the contract with this idea. I was the only person with the idea and capable of doing it, but I actually met with the senior brass of Citibank and had opened this Citibank store that was literally integrated into the credit card, the largest credit card processor in the world. And so I took this to the board and said, we ought to stop advertising and do this model. So it's Affinity we had created. We happened to be Joe as my lead technologist, and we created a way to custom create stores such that you were looking, if you were using a Citibank card, you went into the store as a Citibank member, and you had privileges because of that. It was revolutionary. We had the FedEx store, so that if you wanted to buy office supplies, they were delivered by FedEx in the FedEx store. It was just brilliant. We had, one for the American Heart Association. It went on and on. Each of the largest credit card companies agreed to it, and some of the largest delivery companies. And so it was really extraordinary, and the board didn't want to hear it. And so I found myself, I said, well, there's really nothing I can do here, because what they want to do with this company and what now it sounds like you want to do will destroy it. And 1/3 of the time that it took us to build it. And at the time, it was worth over $1 billion. And I had raised hundreds of millions of dollars for it. And I said, they will go through all of it and they will destroy this company in less than a year. Well, actually, they never presented another accounting report earnings report to Wall Street. They just robbed the money in the company, and they all went away, and there was no accountability. And I find myself on the cover of Business Week magazine with a 14-page spread, and not a single thing that they said was true. Not a word of it.
Scapegoat.
And you're in a position, because you're the CEO, founding CEO of a public company. You're considered a public figure in that regard, and as a public figure, you have no rights. None. It's impossible for you to prevail. And so it was this man that came to me and said, I think we ought to tell our story. Tell it. How has it actually happened? And he says, I got a great way to do it. He says, you've read Moby Dick, right? So Moby Dick is written with a non-omniscient, non-omnipresent narrator who's a character in the story. And he's actually a fairly minor character in the story. It's called My Ishmael. And he says, why don't you write the story and we'll write the story, but write it from my position where it's going to be interesting for people to read it, write it with dialogue. So it's in the form of a novel, even though everything will be exactly as it was. And we did. We wrote in the company of good and evil with the third person narrator, non-omnipresent narrator. And it's I think it was a really good read about every aspect of building a business and then corporate dynamics. I learned a lot from that process, but it's how I learned to write. And the next book was Tea with Terrorists after that, which chronicles my meeting with Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad. And after that,
Tea with Terrorists
Prophet of Doom.
First
Prophet of
book
Doom.
I read of yours. Yeah. And then Prophet of Doom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tea with
So
Terrorists
I know a lot about what they're talking about there. And as a matter of fact, since I'm one of the few people that have traveled extensively in the Soviet Union, back in the time it was the Soviet Union, and got to see what communism did, had the experience of spending enormous amounts of time both east and west of the Iron Curtain, and went into Red China at the time, long before there were enterprise zones, when it was strictly a communist enclave. I know this beast internationally, and I know this beast personally because I've built factories. I built factories around the world. And I happen to be one of the very first to build a free enterprise zone factory in China. So I know exactly what they created, know how it works, and you could no more explain it to a Gen Zer than a man on the moon. They just cannot. They do not have enough substance, enough overall knowledge to be able to explain how things really work.
Yeah, we know from Towrah that when two men get together, it's always bad. You know, one guy has the potential to be good or bad, and so you get a board of directors, it's always going to go bad. I don't think he said, "Hey, Noach, why don't you find you 6 or 7 guys, form a board and build a boat for me? Hey, Moshe, I want you to go out and find 6 or 7 guys to work together and pull the children of Israel out of Mitzrayim." Doesn't work that way, does it?
No, you know, when I built my first business, which was a sales and marketing company, I made my living designing products, packaging those products, creating the distribution channel for those products, and then finding manufacturers to make those products, and then representing companies that made products and helping them design better products and selling them to retail chains. And I was pretty darn good at it. And I went and built a really nice business. And at that time, there were at least 80% of those that I had hired who you could turn your back, give them the keys to the cash register, and they wouldn't steal it even if they thought they could get away with it. The second business that I built was a lighting manufacturer, retail residential lighting manufacturer. And in that business, it was about 50-50. About 50% of the employees, if you turned your back, they would rob you blind. And they could not be trusted. And the third business that I created was the e-commerce company. And in that business, 80% of the employees would cheat you at any time. And I think it was a product of our age, a product of our time, a product of the indoctrination system that has now become the millennials and Gen Z without morals, without a work ethic. And so what I learned is that that God was right. When there's many people, most people are bad most of the time, if not all people are bad all of the time. And so that's the process that I learned, is that God was absolutely right. Humans, when we congregate in any significant numbers, become rotten to the core. And that's one of the reasons why collectivized government, socialism, communism, are far worse than free enterprise as an economic system, because it's the bringing together of more people. And the more people you bring together, the more it's gang mentality and the worse it becomes.
My first W-4 job was Walmart, and it was 16 years old, and that's where I learned the word shrink. I was like, people steal? What
Shrink.
are you talking about?
They call it shrink.
their largest line item loss is shrink, and I'm like, and
Shrink.
it comes from employees, and I'm like,
Right. Why do you think
What
they
do
have
you-
that greeter
really?
at the store? That greeter is not there to say hello to you. The greeter is there to make it more difficult for you to steal something from the store. I My great lesson is shrink, which is that in most businesses now, retail businesses, shrink, which is people with five-finger discount stealing product, is in the 3 to 5% of gross revenue. So most people are, as I have described them, they're thieves. They're rotten. They think that the world's there for them to pilfer. Sarah would just love that. And so Price Club, Saul Price, who was my ultimate mentor in business, he came up with the idea of let's make a club. So it was Price Club. Price Club was the precursor, which you now know as Costco. In fact, it was Price Club that became Costco. So he created this idea of let's have a membership. Let's have a membership card. And he says, I'll trust you, you trust me. The membership is a privilege, and I'll accept your checks. I'll let you come in and at any time, and I'll give you, rather than charge you twice what I pay for the product, which was the standard retail model at the time, I'll charge you 10% more than I pay for the product. So it's a big difference in twice and 10% more. So I'll give you the best deal possible. I will only allow my buyers to buy outstanding product. We will not ever compromise and offer an inferior product. So you know that if we're offering that product, we have tested it and we will stand behind it because we believe that it's the best value. And then we will charge 10% more than we pay for that product or less, never more than 10%, where everybody else was doubling the price. And he says, the thing that will make it work is we're going to have members and people are going to value that membership. And by valuing the membership, we're going to have essentially no shrink. And guess what? They had no shrink. People value that membership.
Interesting. Yeah.
By the way, the other thing was interesting. You couldn't get a Price Company membership without being a small business owner. So he figured that people that actually had to work for a living, they're going to respect other people's property. And so 100% of the initial members of Price Company were small business owners.
Smart. Yeah.
All right. We've talked that one into the ground, haven't we? But, we're in a very unique position. I mean, you're not going to listen to any other person in social media that has the kind of experience that can explain what's wrong with that post more than you will here. And we could talk, I could talk about that post and everything that's right about business and wrong about business and people for 10,000 hours and still make it interesting. But I won't today. All right. So this is Fauci. Fauci has really become part of the news again. And for a whole lot of reasons, Trump, of course, needs somebody that he can criticize and blame. The left wants to turn Fauci into their hero. And then you have Rand Paul, who doesn't like Trump or Fauci. So it is really an interesting dichotomy here. And what people don't know about what happened here is that, first of all, what this poster is saying, this is Brittany, who isn't very bright either, that Dr. Fauci is a hero and the COVID vaccines saved countless lives. Now, overall vaccines are the single most life-saving development in the history of science. Science and the medical practice has never done anything that is capable of mitigating suffering and disease and saving lives as vaccines. So to be anti-vaccine is to be really stupid. That said, the COVID vaccines were useless. They were just useless. The first version of it, we all thought, hey, wow, with the Delta strain, it'd be great, right? So we all signed up. We got the vaccine, and we thought we're good to go. And within 2 months, that vaccine was worthless. It had no legs. And if the vaccine doesn't have legs, it has no value.
Mm-hmm.
And so then their solution was, we'll get vaccinated again.
Boosters,
And,
yeah.
well, yeah, you get your booster. So then it'll go another 2 months. But you can't keep on giving yourself a disease, which is what the vaccine does. You can't continue to do that and not have negative consequences. If one won't have an effect, then you're done. And in this case, the virus mutated, as viruses do. And viruses also become less lethal as they mutate, because the virus does not want to kill you. It wants to use you as a host and to replicate, because the virus can't replicate itself by itself, so it has to have a host. And if it kills the host, it's defeated the purpose. So viruses almost always become less lethal over time. But the second booster lasted half as long as the first, and the third was completely useless. Completely and totally useless. And that's why they stopped demanding that you take the vaccines, is they did not work. The other thing that was really interesting is that even like myself, I took all three vaccines, and I still got COVID 3 times. So 3 vaccines and 3 times with COVID. Even getting COVID didn't make you immune from COVID. Now, part of that is because of this a-hole here that you want to turn into a saint. He was the one who worked around Obama's ban on virus research. Obama banned any virus research in the United States. China didn't. He thought virus research was really a cool thing. So he funded the Hunan Virology Lab. Not with his money, with U.S. taxpayer money. So it's his check that made it possible for them to develop that virus. And that the COVID virus was man-made, absolutely unequivocally. I said that back in February of 2020, when we were just hearing about it. I saw the research. It was all published, and it was absolutely available. It made total sense. And so I wrote about it, and I spoke about it at the time. But that the lab in Wuhan blended 3 types of bats viruses together: AIDS, SARS, and Ebola. And they blended those 3 viruses together to get a combination of virus, but that wasn't the most sinister thing they did. Their primary research, the published research, was on gain of function, where they increased the ability of that virus to attach to human cells, so that the infection rate, the RO, would go up dramatically, and so it was much harder to throw off the virus. And that is what he funded. And they didn't deliberately create that accident, but there was an accident in the lab. The bats got out that had been cross-contaminated and that had this advanced triggering mechanism. And they infected members that worked in that lab, and they left their lab and they infected the community. And China knew about it back in September, which is why China had a vaccine for it within 6 months of the time that it came out, because they not only knew that it had begun to spread 6 months before the rest of us, but they knew the exact strains of viruses that had been concocted to create it, which is why they had a vaccine before anybody else. And China deliberately let that thing then spread around the world. That was their intent. Once the accident happened, it was, this could be the greatest thing that ever happens to China, and it fundamentally changed the economics of the world. And the West did lockdowns. And those lockdowns, that was his idea of prevent people from having liberty and from livelihoods. And we destroyed the U.S. economy. We destroyed human character. And we destroyed any confidence any intelligent person, excuse me, but Brittany, you're not intelligent, would have on science, because the scientific community became political as opposed to sticking by the evidence itself. And so, and then he did the dumbest of all dumb things. rather than following the Torah's instructions, which is if you have a person that's infected with a viral disease, you take them outside of the camp. You scrub down everything that they've been around in your encampment, and you leave them outside of the encampment with care. But you have to use lies and other kinds of things to wash everything that's around them. You have to wear a mask, and they have to wear a mask so that you don't spread it. Something that got prescribed in his Torah, and then you don't let them back into the community until they've been completely healthy for 2 weeks after the last outbreak. And rather than do that, this idiot had the people that were sick brought into hospitals where people were really sick. And so 90+% of the deaths attributed to COVID were comorbidities, where they had 3 to 5 other life-risking ailments, and that COVID was just one of them. And they would have died from any one of them. And it was all attributed to COVID to create fear porn, to make assholes like this more powerful. So, no, this is not a good man. This is a very evil man. But vaccines typically are very good. It's just that in COVID, they weren't.
I remember during the height of COVID, looking at the news every day in the newspaper, there'd be a new number. It's like the headline was a number of deaths, and it was all just it just
poppycock.
Point where
it was poppycock.
Fear.
Because if you actually read the CDC reports, which nobody did, and the journalists, of course, didn't, the CDC was reporting that if somebody had COVID and any one of any other comorbidity, you blame the death on COVID, not on heart disease, not on diabetes, not on vascular disease. You blame it on COVID. And so we attributed deaths to COVID that had nothing really to do with COVID at all. Ultimately, the other problem we had was the infection rate. Some 80% of people who got COVID were asymptomatic. Or their symptoms were such that they didn't bother to be tested, because once you're tested, there's all sorts of things that were horrible that happened to you. So the fact is that with 80% of those who got the disease being asymptomatic, by the time that they found that out because they tested whole communities for any legacy of COVID, and to see how many reported versus how many actually had the virus, and they found out that 80% of the people that had contracted COVID were not counted among those who were infected. And so when you recognize that, and then you remove the comorbidity claims, and COVID was actually a fairly normal flu in terms of 1 death per 1,000, typically of older people and very young people. And COVID was about that. The only difference with COVID and anything else is that it was blended, so it would affect people slightly differently. And because of the triggering mechanism and the attachment mechanism of that spike protein that they played around with, it had a tendency to have what they call long COVID, or ongoing symptoms over a longer period of time. And so it was the manufacturing of that virus that this asshole knew all about and denied, when many of us, I myself included, and I probably was as vocal as anybody at the time, knew exactly that it had been manufactured, and he lied about it.
Yeah.
He had a financial interest.
Well, he didn't have really so much of a fund. It wasn't his money that was invested. It was U.S. money that was invested. He had a reputation interest. To get his PhD, he stole other people's work. So he was actually a fraud in his doctor status. And that was on AIDS research. He stole the research of others and filed it under his own name. And here he would have been caught exacerbating the situation that he was employed to resolve, and he did everything wrong.
It's quite a transition this guy has had, right? I mean, at the height of COVID, he was the face of science and
believe science.
Yeah. Believe
he
science.
Was a fraud.
He was the face of that, yeah. And now he's not. He's getting lambasted.
He was a fraud. He's always been a fraud. He is a fraud. And nothing's going to change that. And the only reason that you wouldn't present him as a fraud is because your politics wants you to lash out at others and rally behind people that you don't know. And that's what happens with the likes of Brittany. She's just ignorant and irrational.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the numbers too. The interesting thing with COVID was they certainly didn't make a test that anybody really wanted to do, did they? I mean, they shoved a swab way up into your nose, and you're just supposed to want to go do that. And it just seemed really.
Why would you want to go do that? Because if you're going to be around other people that are sick, you're going to wait in a line with other people that are sick and touch things around other people that are sick and be around people that have been nothing but touching people who are nothing but sick. No, the whole thing was nothing but a fraud from beginning to end. And I did the research that I published, which showed that the states and the countries that were the least restrictive fared the best, and those that were the most restrictive fared the worst.
Yeah, I remember we were here in Oregon. We were allowed to operate, except we couldn't allow anybody in to the tasting room. So we had to keep the door closed, and we could try to sell some wine, on a table just outside the front door. And it just, it just seems like the things that they tried to introduce and do were just backwards, and just it didn't help at all. Nothing.
No, it's just stupid, just unbelievably stupid. Yeah. All right, so that's the truth on Mr. Fauci. Oh God, one scum to another. X is a den of iniquity. All right, so here is that Netanyahu is saying, no, we are a democracy, so that makes us good, and we're going after the bad guys. We're going after the barbarians. And people are just so stupid today. They really have no concept of what democracy means. In America, the founding fathers hated democracy. They knew it. Unfortunately, the word has been used now so that America is considered a Western liberal democracy, and it is not a democracy. And democracy would mean that the people would vote for everything. If the government decides to tax, it would be by popular vote. If the government decides to spend, it would be by popular vote. If the government decides to go to war, because the people chose to go to war and they voted for it. There's actually never been a democracy, not in the history of the world. There's never been one. There have been two oligarchies, and those oligarchies were vicious. One was Greece, and it wasn't Greece. It was just the city-state of Athens. About 150 years, the city-state of Athens was an oligarchy. It's interesting, of course, during the oligarchy, they still had a king. And Athens was a brutal place. The Greeks were conquerors. That was a warish city-state. So you had Athens for a period of time, and Athens ultimately destroyed their oligarchy because they sought to impose it on the islands between mainland, the peninsula of Greece, and Asia Minor, where the Persians were. And so they compelled these other island communities to accept their oligarchic status so that they would be part of a league that would serve as the warning bell when the Persians were coming. So they compelled their system of free will, of choice. So that was a fraud. The longest lived oligarchy, the only other one in history, were the Spartans. And the Spartans were the barbarians. There's no culture probably in the history of the planet that was as savage as the barbarians. That's saying a lot, because the Romans were really savage. The Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, they were unbelievably savage. The Polynesians, unbelievably savage. So people were savage. The Assyrians, stunningly savage. So the Spartans, I think, were the single most savage country and city-state and country that had any longevity. If you were a Spartan woman, you had only one right, and that's to get pregnant and to have children that could be turned into either weapons manufacturing facilities that you would make the next weapon. If it's a boy, and if it's a girl, you're making the next weapon factory. And if you were a boy, you were treated like shit. They abused you. They did everything they could to make certain that only the toughest survived. And the only way you could survive as a child in Sparta is to be tough as nails. And then, because the Spartans only knew one thing, which was war, they couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't farm. They couldn't raise herds. They didn't know how to do any of that. So they enslaved all of their neighbors to be full-time slaves to feed this menacing machine. And that's Sparta. So that's the longest-lived oligarchy. And there are no democracies. So to say democracy is to say, I am really stupid. I've got no idea what the term actually means, and I'm calling something that is horrible good. And the reason that two oligarchies prevailed for a period of time, even though they were ruthless, is that the people who have skin in the game, who are making things, who are making a contribution to the society, are in a position where they should have the right to decide how that money is spent. If they decide that they want to grant some kind of an educational program, they think that's what's best for the country, they will do it. If they think there's a medical program that'd be best for the country, they'll impose it. If they think that they ought to go to war with so-and-so because so-and-so is being threatening, they will do it. But it's the people that are the best informed and that have the most to lose and that are making the biggest contribution that get to make that decision. Now, the moment you go to what we call a democracy today and you allow everybody to vote, even if they're voting to redistribute money because they aren't productive and they want to take money from those who are productive, what happens is the majority become unproductive and they continue to rob those who are productive until those who produce stop producing. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with a democracy. It has a 0% chance of surviving. And America's experiment isn't going to work. America, even as a representative government, was on the model of an oligarchy. You couldn't vote unless you were a landowner. Mm-hmm. And when we decided it doesn't matter, everybody one vote, you have just people who are really, really stupid. I mean, 99% of people who vote in America do not understand economics. They have no understanding of history. They have no understanding of business. They have no understanding of the nature of taxation. They don't understand the medical practice. They understand education. They're not well educated. They're not in a position to make an intelligent decision. They're counterproductive. They're not beneficial.
Yeah. And they don't really identify the person they're voting on based on what the person, they're just voting based on their party. I mean,
mommy and daddy were Democrats or Republicans, and so they're going to be Democrats and Republicans. I just read a survey that 83% of Christians are Christians because their mother or father was a Christian. And if their mother or father wasn't a Christian, there's less than a 20% likelihood that they would be a Christian. So the same thing is true with politics. If you were born in a liberal family, your chances are you're going to be liberal. And if you were born in a conservative family, chances are you're going to be conservative. For a while, there was a distinct choice between Democrats being more socialistic, more liberal, and Republicans being more conservative, more free enterprise. That's all gone now. It's two very, very corrupt parties, and we should have nothing to do with either one of them. They're just scum on both sides. I mean, you couldn't be more scum than the Twistian MAGAs. And the Democrats have gone full communist. So you got nothing in America now on either side. It's not even salvageable.
Democracy is one of the finest examples. If you repeat the lie,
yes,
it becomes true.
Well, there's been a number of books written on propaganda democracy, where without propaganda, there is no democracy. First of all, there's really no such thing as a democracy. So democracy itself is propaganda. If you think that you're a democratic country, like he's saying, then you're buying into or you're promoting the propaganda because you don't qualify. Americans do not vote for things. They have a representative government that is falling apart because they're voting for their party thugs. But no, America is not a democracy, and democracy runs on propaganda.
That was going to be my point. I have never in the history heard of anything good. Demos, mob, cracy, rule. When has mob ever had a good connotation? Okay? I mean, public lynchings, tar and featherings, those are your examples of democracy, of mob rule. When people when they get together in a emotional concept and we're going to do something now with no thought whatsoever, those are your examples of mob rule.
People that march through the street and say "Free Palestine" and are so threatening, and then that mentality when it goes to the university and starts threatening Jews, or ICE today as they go off and target Hispanics. It's mob rule is really a nasty thing, and that's what God lamented against. He says, when people became many, they became universally bad. I regret having created them. This was a really bad idea. And that, by the way, is a really bad man. I think
I heard the expression first time in one of the Yahowah collections is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner.
Yeah,
right?
for dinner.
Is a democracy.
Yeah, that's exactly. All right. One of the most dangerous things a Christian can do is think for themselves. This will lead to reason and to atheism. No, it does not lead to atheism. There are very few atheists in the world. Really, very few. Like there's a post all the time that you see on X and say, the majority of Swedes are atheists, and it has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. First of all, it doesn't have one of the lowest crime rates in the world, and 17% of Swedes are atheists. So the reason doesn't lead to intelligence, obviously. The fact is that Yahowah makes a beautiful case for himself. He uses prophecy, he uses accurate depictions of creation and ancient history to prove that he was there and caused these things to happen. And then he has just exceedingly detailed presentations of ancient cultures that affected Israel. And every time that an archaeologist goes out and they put their spade in the ground, they find that exactly where he said this was going to happen, when he said it was going to happen, it happened exactly that way. It's the archaeologist has never disproven anything, and they've proven time and again that all this is true. And you even go to Thutmose the Great was the pharaoh of the Exodus. I've said that, and you can easily date the Exodus to his time. And I've proven that. And then they go and the Mount Ebal, where they had the Torah says you're going to one mount. I want you to cross the valley. I want you to shout that, if we listen to Yahowah and do as he has asked, then we're going to be blessed. And the other side says if we ignore Yahowah and do the opposite of what he asked, then we're going to be cursed. And so they went to that side that was the curse and they found that the altar that was described in the Torah was built exactly as it was described in exactly the place it was described. They even found a lead tablet that has the curse written in it in the ancient pictographic alphabet. But most interesting to me is they had a cartouche of Thutmose the Great, who was the pharaoh of the Exodus. And of course, then you look and you find Thutmose the Great. He was the only one of the pharaohs in his time area that had a firstborn son who predeceased him, and they don't give any reason for the firstborn son dying and on honor their propaganda, but he's clearly firstborn son is dead. And so no matter what you do, you find that God did a marvelous job. And then he has prophecy, which is that he has committed to writing those things which he says will happen in the future. And he's been 100% accurate in what he has forecast to occur. And so if you're a thinking person and you understand the nature of life and you understand the nature of this planet and how unique this planet is, and there's no other planet like it in the universe, an intelligent life just cannot happen. I mean, you could have amoebas and bacteria and that sort of thing. We've not seen evidence of it anyplace else, and it may not be anyplace else. And it's exceedingly unlikely. But when you go from that to intelligent life, there's no basis for intelligent life. So you can't justify atheism. So if you're really a reasonable, thoughtful person, you're not going to be an atheist. You could be an agnostic, but not an atheist. And it is true that thinking is destructive to any religion. If you were to read the 5 volumes that I've written called Twistianity, in opposition to Christianity, you will not be a Christian. It'd be impossible for anybody who is a Christian to even get through the first of those 5 books and remain a Christian. The evidence against the religion is overwhelming. But the thing you have to be careful of is that God hates religion. So God is not who the religious paint him to be. So Christianity is not only has to be wrong for God to be true, God overtly condemns it. So the fact that you can prove Christianity true does not prove God to be false. It actually proves God to be true because he's opposed to it.
Yeah, the fatal error of this meme here is that they're attaching God to religion. And so it's they can't separate God from religion, right?
Because they're really not these posters, they're really not very bright. And they are, of course, incapable of going into a debate against God as he depicts himself. And going against religion is, like being the U.S. Army and you're going to go in against 3 kids in a sandbox with a couple of spitwads. So, big deal.
Yeah.
Big whoop.
Exactly.
And by the way, what's the point? Because no religious person is going to listen to evidence and reason against the religion. The only reason that we expose and condemn religion is for those who have not subscribed to it, but are in a society influenced by it, because you have to get rid of the religious lies for the truth to resonate.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the quote? The first sip
step
out of the glass of physics is makes a person agnostic, and by the time they finish the glass, they know that it doesn't work without a God.
Yes.
It's the more we study, and the more we study Torah, and the more we learn as a cultural, through physics and science. Zachariah quotes Dode in saying that the universe is flat as a pancake. How much bigger? How could they possibly know that? How much? You know what I mean? That these things.
Yeah. The Earth's not flat, but the universe is. It's so interesting. But the Earth's not flat, but the universe actually is. Everything we can tell about the end, and of course, the universe can't be flat, and to have a Big Bang, it would be spherical.
Yeah, and Yahweh uses the term tumultuous uproar, hamon. You're right.
Yeah, he uses he's the one that coined the Big Bang,
right.
But he's not in the model that science would say there was one singularity and all of the energy and material substance of the entire universe of 2 trillion galaxies was in this singularity the size of a pinhead. That's the dumbest idea ever of dumb ideas. And God doesn't do that. He just says that the universe was created with a Big Bang and that light energy expanded and overall coalesced into matter. His description is right in time and in the process. And of course, scientists went until the 1950s. 99% of scientists said the universe is steady state. It was not created. And then back in the 1950s with the Hubble constant and other discoveries, 99% of scientists went the opposite direction and say, oh yeah, the universe did have a beginning, it was created. We just don't want to admit who created it or how it was created, and our theory for how it was created is really stupid. And by the way, now James Webb and the telescope is showing that, yeah, it doesn't work at all. You need to go back to the drawing board because that was a really dumb idea. So, it's really interesting. The universe is actually expands the same distance from you, no matter where you might be, and that's not possible if it really is as they describe it. And they found out that the age of it is different than what they have postulated, and just essentially everything. Never, ever underestimate how much God is protecting you from things you don't even know about. Now, doesn't that just define faith for you?
That is.
Don't you ever underestimate all the stuff that you don't know that would cause you to light your hair on fire and say, this is the dumbest idea ever. And of course, the victory in Christ puts 100% after it. Faith isn't any stupid thing. That's just the bottom line. If you have faith and you believe that you're being protected from things you don't know about, then you are a religious fool. Then you are, you're either a Christian or you're a Muslim or something else of that ilk, or you could be a heretic for all I care. You're just a fool. You have no idea who God is. You're besmirching who God is. God has no knowledge of who you are, doesn't give two rats patooties about you, isn't protecting you, isn't going to save you, does not know you, doesn't even like you. And if you're religious, God hates you. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
The fatal error just continues to be to attach God to religion. They cannot separate.
Right. Oh, I know.
They
And
just
victory
can't
in
do
Christ, they made their God a man.
Yeah.
A big whoop. Boy, I got a really big God, man. He's just like me. He's a man. And my God, he is kind of a wimp because he was killed by men. And he's a liar too, because he got all pissed off that his own people killed him. And he blamed Jews for crucifying him, and Jews have never crucified anyone, so he's a liar. I mean, you got a really, really pathetic God there, victory in Christ. There is no prophecy regarding a Christ. There was no Jesus until the 17th century. There were no contemporary eyewitnesses, not a one. There's not even independent eyewitness of anything that you claim. And you're saying that God was among us and not a single person wrote about him. Not one. I mean, you've got nothing. I mean, it's just the most stupid, moronic thievery ever. Because everything you claim is actually, well, not everything, because a lot of the stuff you claim is pagan and based on Dionysus, but all the important stuff actually belongs and credited to another person that you've just robbed, and he happens to be God's firstborn, and so there's nothing but piss God off. There is no religion that God hates more than Christianity because of what it's done to him and to his beloved son.
There's no shortage of Christian propaganda on the social media sites. I'll tell you that.
No,
it's
God
continuous stuff like this. That's just
And my ex, I have not set myself up to follow anybody. Your ex, you can follow, and you can choose people to follow you. There's not a person, not a poster that promotes religion that I have ever signed up to follow. But Grok has turned Facebook into a wasteland, because you can see how many, because I just went through my post this morning and said, this is stupid, that's wrong, that's dumb, that's stupid. So I'm getting trash that I didn't sign up to receive. And yet I get no posts from those people that I said I would like to follow. So it's just all a farce.
Yeah. Grok can't understand that Yah is not religious, so he thinks that you just need more religious stuff.
Yeah. Grok gave up to the fact checking bit. You can lie if you're religious. You can lie if you're political. You can lie. You're a conspiratorialist. You can lie. Everybody lies on X, and Grok doesn't give a hoot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even worse on Facebook, which is why we're using X at the moment. They kind of ebb and flow, and right now, Facebook is much worse than X. Most of the time, X is worse than Facebook. For example, this. The Ummah, which is a Islamic community, awakens, and they have a picture of a young Julian Assange. And the quote is, "Forget Russia. The real threat to America comes from Israel and the Israel lobby." So guess what?
Never said it.
Correct. Never said
Ever.
it. Never said anything even remotely close to it. And Grok allows it. So what in the F-bomb is wrong with you, Grok? What's wrong with X? Why do you have a cesspool? If you have a cesspool where the post that you, and it's not just the post, I didn't solicit this post. You sent me. You are promoting this post. X and Grok. You are promoting the lie. You're as guilty, in fact, more guilty than this Muslim liar. Because I didn't sign up for this. You sent it to me. You're promoting the lie. It is a lie. He never said it. That makes the Ummah a lie. However, what's Grok's excuse? What's X's excuse in all of this? Why do they promote known deceptions? It takes less than 15 seconds to verify this is untrue.
Yeah.
You know, just copy paste it into any search engine, and it'll come back. No, it was, the line was actually written by an anti-Semite in the U.S. Intelligence community. I think out of the CIA.
CIA officer Philip.
Well, that makes sense.
Giraldi.
Yeah.
Yep. So a CIA officer and trying to promote propaganda, like Kent, is the one who actually wrote the line. Like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, it had nothing to do with Jews and was wrongly attributed to them. In this case, the person who said it is part of the most evil institution in America, the CIA, and had nothing to do with a man I view quite heroically. I think Snowden and Assange are two of the great heroes of our time.
Mm-hmm. Boy, they're so anxious to blame the little country in the middle of Muslim countries for everything, huh? I mean, it's just it's sickening that it's.
Jews have pursued apartheid and genocide on Jews for 14 centuries, and they have raped the world, have 57 colonies based upon their plunder of the world. They continued to plunder the world for 1,000 years after Muhammad created Islam. They murdered hundreds of millions of people. They do not tolerate any other religion. The Quran orders Muslims to fight to the death, killing all non-Muslims, and yet this world will pick on Israel and blame Israel, which is the first victim of Islam were the Jews. Well, they were actually the first victims of Islam were Muhammad's own family. He raped and robbed his own family, then he turned on the Jews.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have no proof of anything. It's just random. It's just quotes attributed to other people, and here's your proof. You know,
all it proves is that X is a platform that promotes lies, and it's filled with people and bots who promote lies, and that lies outnumber interesting, accurate posts on X probably 100 to 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Vivid is amongst my least favorite people. He is the most acclaimed pro-Israel account. I'm very pro-Israel, and that's why I despise him. This remains one of the most powerful videos I've ever seen. IDF soldiers praying before they go to war. God bless our heroes. Oh, yeah. Dear God, help me become a killer. God, let me destroy Gaza all the more so the world hates me all the more. What in the world are you dreaming of? I mean, first of all, don't draw God into this. He is opposed to Israel now. Yes, at one time he chose Israelites, but they didn't choose him back. And then when Israel became prayerful and religious, God says, that's it. We're divorced. You want to go and be religious as opposed to engage in the covenant relationship, then from my point of view, you've cheated on the relationship. I want nothing to do with you. I'm leaving you. I'm going to heaven. I will have nothing to do with you because you're religious. And he says, I'll return when you return to me, but not before. They haven't returned, and they are still religious, which is the same thing as spitting in God's face. So rather than this being a powerful video, what this is an indictment of everything that's wrong with Israel.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yah made his position very clear in Hosea, right? And they just
Yes, no doubt about it.
They can't see it. They don't. They're not reading that. They're going to ignore that. You know?
Yep, God is the entire Torah is a declaration of how much God hates religion and how religious the children of Israel were, which created a wholly antagonistic 40 years.
Yeah.
There were no high watermarks. There were only low watermarks. They went from one travesty to another. So if you say you're Jewish and you're Torah observant, all you're going to do is cry.
Yeah.
Because your people were obnoxious. And you're not going to be a practitioner of Judaism. You cannot claim to believe in Judaism and be Torah observant because the Torah is anti-religious, and the religions it hates the most are those that are practiced by the Jews. So it's just this game that people play. If you're Haredi, you're a complete hypocrite. You're not Torah observant, you're Talmud observant because the Torah condemns you.
Yeah.
And by the way, God never once asked anyone to pray to him. Never once asked anyone to worship him. Never once asked anybody to bob their heads up against a stone wall.
Yeah.
Never once told them to do any of the things that they're doing. But he did tell them that if you negate the value of my name, that's unforgivable, and they wrote him out of their lives. They no longer refer to themselves as Yahud or even Yisrael. They refer to themselves as Jews that wrote his name out of their name. And they refer to their mythical man god of the rabbis as Hashem. So they're in deep trouble. And now we've entered the time of trouble. So it's just going to get worse every day. And it is. Oh, Matthew 9 makes it clear who Jesus is. Now, let's be real. 80% of the book that bears the name Matthew now was plagiarized from one of three sources. Well, 80% of the book that bears the name Matthew is plagiarized from two sources, Mark and Luke. 20% of the book that bears this name, Matthew, was plagiarized from the Ebionites. The two things that were plagiarized from the Ebionites are the Sermon on the Mount and the Olivet Discourse, both of which destroy Christianity. They chew Christianity up and spit it out. And the Ebionites are talked about throughout the Torah. There's no mention of a church, Christianity, Christ, or Jesus anywhere in the Torah prophets, but there sure is a mention of the Ebionites, and they wrote in Hebrew what became the only additions to Mark and Luke that are in this plagiarized book called Matthew. The book claims that of itself that he was the tax collector, and yet that man's name was Lowy, which we now render as Levite. So no, the whole thing's a fraud. And for you to quote that book as if it was a historical eyewitness account that proves anything shows that you don't know that it was written by an imposter right around 100 CE. It was written 70 years after the fact. 70 years after the fact by somebody who wasn't there, who plagiarized 100% of what he had to say. And the two sources he plagiarized from were not eyewitnesses either. And those two plagiarized sources were loyal to Paul, who admitted that he was demon-possessed, lied about God in every possible way, and they didn't write until 10 years after Paul's death. And they weren't there at the time either. No, you got no proof in Christianity other than absolute proof that the whole thing's a lie.
Yeah. It's interesting that they put what they put up there. He forgives sins, heals paralyzed man, and knows people's thoughts. Those are that's the proof text that they provided here for this meme. It's interesting.
That's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
It's
what evidence would you, let's just pretend that the book of Matthew was written by somebody that was part of the gang and that was actually there at the time. Just pretend. Totally false, but you could pretend. What proof would you have that he could know people's thoughts?
Yeah, right.
And if he knew people's thoughts, why did he ask Peter, "Who do you say I am?"
Right.
Yeah,
nothing doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, how do you know he forgives sins? How does he forgive sins?
Yeah.
What evidence do you have that that's true?
Yeah.
None. And the healing of a paralyzed man, again, what evidence?
Yeah.
You know, if this was such a big deal and a man who claimed to be God, and by the way, there's no place where gospel Jesus ever claims to be God. If there was a man who claimed to be God, and you won't find it anywhere in the Christian New Testament, it was voted on in the 4th century at the Nicene Council. But if a man who claimed to be God and that performed miracles and walked on water and was crucified by the Romans and then was twinkle-toed and got back up 3 days later and showed himself, and you don't think that the Romans who wrote down everything, they can tell you what the legions had for lunch.
Yeah.
And you think that there would be not a single eyewitness account written about this, and nothing, not anything written about this until 40 to 60, 70 years thereafter?
Right.
By people who couldn't even quote God's testimony accurately, who contradicted themselves and each other. I mean, it's just pathetic.
They believe it.
Yeah.
They believe it because they don't know it.
Believe.
If you knew it, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Just got to believe and give me the last 4 years of your W-2 so we can calculate your tithe.
Yeah.
Belief takes care of all the problems. As long as you
loves a
believe,
cheerful giver.
You're good.
Yes.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on in this picture? You guys know more about the Christian New Testament than I do. What are they stealing this guy from someplace?
No.
I mean, what's he?
The story is they had to open up this hole in the roof to get the guy out of his house. If the guy is really paralyzed and he's crippled, then you're going to walk into the house and he's going to walk out of the house. But no, they have to lift him out of the house. There is a miracle here. Anyone believes it. And of course, the person who wrote the first 14 books of the Christian New Testament and had total control over what was written in the next 3, Mark, Luke, and the book of Acts, he claims that he had an encounter with the said Jesus, quotes a line from Dionysus to prove it. Has 3 variations of the account that are not consistent, and he was rendered paralyzed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So put that in your pipe and smoke it too, huh?
Yeah, the picture's just goofy. I just don't
well,
know.
Everything about
the whole
Christianity
story is just
goofy.
The whole thing is goofy.
Yeah, there was no Jesus. There was no Mr. Christ. There's no prophecies of a Christ. God's not a man. Men cannot kill God. And there's no eyewitnesses. The whole thing's goofy. Yeah. Kosher. It's time. Let's make history. Finish the job, Mr. President. Go to hell, kosher. Really, go to hell. You were played. America was played. You made a bad situation worse. doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on decisions that have bitten you in the butt, that have literally checkmated Israel. The memorandum of understanding checkmated Israel. There was nothing left to do. The game's over. There's no way out of this war, and this war can't be finished. You can't finish this war even if you were to decide that you wanted to nuke 90 million people. You still couldn't finish the war, because that means that you'd be the next one nuked.
Yep.
There is no finishing the job. He ran out of bombs. The military is no longer willing to respond. He lied about everything. He is Satan incarnate. And you want to promote Satan. And you want to tie Israel's fate to Satan. And everything the man says is a lie. He's just death incarnate. Deceit incarnate. And you want to write, finish the job, Mr. President, I'm a Jew. No wonder the world hates Israel. No wonder the world hates America. No wonder that that you're down to 20 some odd percent, high 20s now, low 30s approval rating for Satan incarnate and Trump and America. And the only place that he has a higher approval rating is Israel. Then he's betrayed you. Look at the memorandum of understanding. If you don't understand betrayal, then good God, stop talking. Stop posting. You're not helping yourself. They've deployed the aircraft carriers to the point where one of them's now in a 2 to 3 year potty break. They took the Ford back. It won't see water again for 2 or 3 years to fix the damn toilets and the laundry. Yeah. And they've had 2 others there for no value whatsoever, making the assuring that the strait stays closed and that the cost of ending the war becomes ever more egregious.
Yeah. You see, this is what this has become. Pro-Israel becomes, American war machine. This is what happens here. And so now they confuse, supporting Israel or supporting Israelites with American war machine. That's what this propaganda then does, so it's just
let's finish the job, which is the new theme of the MAGAs and of Israel. You made a horrendous decision. I'm not telling you that after the fact. I told you that before the fact, that if you went and attacked Iran again, there would be no way out.
Yeah.
That you'd lose. And there was no chance, there was no way you could win. You were not going to get regime change no matter what you did. You had no possibility. In fact, you were going to exacerbate that problem and make it worse. You were going to galvanize the country around the regime, and by taking out the existing leadership, you were going to impose far more aggressive leadership against you. You were going to turn Iran from a country the world didn't like into the hegemon of the region. I mean, you did everything wrong. And you set up Israel for exactly what Iran now is saying, that Israel, you're going to get yours. We've already got the plan in place. I've read it. It's in the prophets. Yoel presents it. Yahowah presents it. Zechariah presents it. It's all over the prophets. That it's Iran that sends 4 million mujahideen into Israel. And so that's how they're going to finish the job. And what they're going to do is take Israel to the brink of extinction. One of these days, you're going to, a few of you are going to applaud, because there is somebody that's going to finish the job. He's going to kalal. And when he kalal and he finishes the job, it will be to eliminate every military soldier in the world, every religious individual in the world, every practitioner of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Hinduism, Marxism, every conspirator, every anti-Semite. 15 million Jews will be reduced to 1,500. That's what's going to happen. And so there is someone who's going to finish the job. He is actually called by God the finisher. But the person that you're applauding, he's Satan. And that same God that's the finisher finishes him too. You have a lot to learn, Kosher.
Yep.
Shame on you for promoting the opposite of what's true.
Yep.
And we know his name. It's on the temple, you know?
Yes, yeah, you know his name. He's on the temple. Well, the temple's been destroyed, so. But it's in the writings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you read the Torah, you'll find the Nakar. You read Isaiah, you'll find the Choder. You read the most redeeming story in the whole of the book, and you'll find Boaz. He has more prophecies pursuant to him than anyone else. There are 0 prophecies of a coming Christ. 0.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are upwards of 1,000 regarding this individual who's actually going to finish the job. And you're that ignorant of them.
And yet the rabbis think a red heifer is going to finish the job. So they're looking for a red heifer right now.
A red heifer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
the pure red heifer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's amazing that people are so ignorant. And, you know, I might have been in this category previously too, that they didn't bother to think through how was it possible for them to be the feminine ending, like Adama or Parah, on words that apply to men. But it's throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it about the ending which is, by the way, depicted as a man standing up and reaching up, that helps us understand why the bull, becomes a parah, or why the Adam, man, becomes an Adamah. What is it that explains that? Because it's always masculine singular that fills all of these roles, even with a title that has the ending. And I can tell you there's 2 aspects of it that became obvious when you just do a very straightforward approach to everything God says. I always want to know why. And then I want to know if there are connections with other things that God has said that explain why. Are they consistent all the way through? Why? So why is the par a parah? How is the ending written in Hebrew? How is it written? That's a question. I'm asking the question. How is it's a simple question. How is how is it written?
Hey.
Okay.
Man upright. Yeah.
A man standing up and reaching up and looking up to God.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take par, which is the word for bull, which, by the way, would be written by, he's a very vocal man. The pa is drawn as a mouth, and the R makes him a thoughtful man, because that's a human head with ears and eyes and a mouth and a brain. So you've got mouth, head of a man, and what you're now doing to that is you're adding the picture of a man standing up and reaching up, and you think that makes it girly? You think that turns that bull into a heifer, as opposed to, I'm trying to tell you something here, fellas.
Yeah.
It's a man, and it's a man with a damn big mouth and a really big head. So there's a man with a big mouth and a big head who is standing up for me. That's parah. It ain't a girly cow.
Right.
And with men, are you able to get pregnant and deliver offspring there, Noah?
No, it doesn't happen that way. Yep.
But a woman can't she?
Yes, you can.
So if you can combine something that is masculine, which is resolute, strong, and logical, rational, bold, and you can add the concept of productivity to him, you have expanded the capacity of that individual, have you not?
Mm-hmm.
You have.
That's the other aspect of Adamah and of Parah, and of all of the feminine titles that are associated with masculine individuals. You've made them more productive, and you've identified them as a man. And so that's the answer. It's not a girly cow. And Adamah is Adam's name, and it is written with the first letter being drawn as the head of a bull.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be looked at also as a ram, but the horns and the yoke are strictly bull. And it has a deleth in the middle, which is a doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And the mem, which is water, which is the source of life and of purging and cleansing. And so to that, you're adding a person standing up and reaching up, making a stand. So you can call that red if you want to. You can say, okay, bloody red. You still got to convey man, because that's what Adam means.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a bloody red man of the earth, which is Adamah, also means earth. So a bloody red man of the earth who is productive because of the ending, who is associated with water. He's the man from the sea. He is the man who purges in the end on Towrah. Bloody red man from the sea who is productive, who's associated with water, who opens the doorway for humankind. Mm-hmm. And he is a productive bull who happens to be a man too. So yeah, it's all there. You just got to look. You got to care enough to look. You've got to be interested enough to know the truth and to care about the why behind things.
Of course, expressing all of that would destroy the rabbi's religion. So that
it would.
That will never,
of course,
that will never get expressed.
Yeah.
The rabbi's religion, it destroys everything.
Every religion.
I mean, everybody lies on top of lies on top of lies. Strongs exist to promote the lie. We know these things.
Yes. So the answer is always the two things God asks us to listen and to observe, so that we can learn. And when we learn, we come to know. And if we make the connections, we ask the why questions, then we can go from knowing to understanding. And once we understand, we're in a position to respond to what God is offering and expects in return. And then we can become a fellow finisher. Mm-hmm. It was something that was just so profound as we were pursuing Yahowah 10 and 11, the story of the Towrah. God calls him the finisher. I got to finish him. It's my guy. So, but he's not a Mr. President. He's a Mr. Nakar. He's a Mr. Towrah. He's a Mr. Na'ar. He's a Mr. Zeroah. He's a Mr. Adamah. He's a Mr. Parah. And he's going to be the one who takes down your Mr. President, who is Rahab.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Probably a good place for us to end. We're at just shy of 2 hours. We've kept another 2 hours. That's pretty good. We're going to work on a shorter show. I probably had twice as many posts that I put up that we could have reviewed today.
Right.
But it's been a lively discussion, and that's always fun. And it's wonderful to have you here. No, we'll have to have you more often. That part's fun. We've had many shared experiences over the years, and so it's fun to work together. We'll need more of you.
Always enjoy it, and look forward to it anytime. Anytime I hear from
Yep.
Kevin, hey, we'll
Yep.
bring you on. All right.
Yeah, I knew
sounds
you were
good.
going to
Let's
be
do
on
it.
this week. I didn't know what day you were going to be on this week, but I'm glad you're here. We'll get you even more often if we can in the rotation. Rich likes it when you're here because he doesn't have to be the man in the circle.
Well, there was no math today, so I
There was no math today, so you were good. you were good, so long as there's not any math. Boy, that presentation of Ruth, that goes right to the heart, doesn't it? We've done now 2 programs on Ruth, but it really does go to the mind and to the heart. That is such an amazing story.
For it to follow
Yeah,
the story that it
Judges.
follows, I
Shipad.
didn't realize
Yeah.
it's literally, this is once again,
Yeah,
do
fix
or
the problem.
die.
Fix the problem, Mr. Fixer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The story before it was hard to get through. I mean, that was pretty revolting and disgusting. And
But Naomi's cursing of God.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty revolting.
Call me
and
Mara.
we haven't
It's-
gotten to the point where the sages in the 4th chapter also curse Boaz and Naomi. But I've just never heard anybody bother to explain, why is there only one name associated with Yahweh's temple, his home for his name and for the covenant family? Because Yahweh's name's not written on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's only one name on it. It's Boaz.
Boaz. Yep.
Yakin is a title that is very loosely associated with Dode, but certainly addresses Dode, and Dode's certainly more important than Boaz. But the fact is, there's only one name on it, and why would people not pay attention to what that guy did?
Yeah. Why would that not
Never
be
asked
analyzed
the
more?
why question.
Right.
Yeah, why would that?
Yeah.
And, in all these prophecies, the Towrah is the most profoundly important prophecy among any one of the prophets. 2 entire chapters of Yeshayah devoted to it. And he gets the only person in human history to get the 7 spirits of Yahweh. And he is identified all the way through with the very opening prophecy that God gives about the 2 luminaries, and then the next about the role that the 2 trees will play. And yet they can't put it together. And then the Nakar is one of the closing prophecies in the Torah, and talks about the Nakar, the observant foreigner, that he's going to come at a time where the earth reverts back to the conditions of Sodom, and there's going to be a nuclear holocaust. And he's the one guy that's there saying, I can finish this job, and you can be part of that remnant when we're done. And you're going to get the koshers siding with Trump even to the very end.
It really gives you an idea of the kind of man and woman that Yahweh appreciates, that he wants to work with, that he loves.
Yes.
That story of Boaz and Ruth really gives you an idea of the man and woman that he likes to work with.
The kind of personalities that he enjoys working with, that he finds productive to get the job done. He only found 5 of them until this very end. And this very end, it takes a family to get this what we're up against now. It takes a family, and so he's augmented 2 of those personalities to bring the 3rd back to prominence, but in conjunction with the family, because that's what it takes to get this job done at this point.
Yeah,
that's the job.
All these Christians.
That's the job we're going to finish, and the job we're going to finish is we're going to deliver a mortal remnant to Yahweh and to Dode that's crediting us with more than we should be credited with, because it's Yahweh that scours the world to bring the mortal remnant in. But we are the people that he is working with at that time to get that job done. And we are also the people that eliminate all of the human hostilities to them, while Yahweh purges the earth and returns it to the garden. So we are collaborators with him. But at this point, he's the driving force of what we do. He just happens to like working through people, and he likes giving credit. So we have to be honest, though. He's the one that will make this happen. But we will be a flaming sword. We're gonna. It actually says in the Towrah chapter that he's going to be the leading cause of death. It's really sobering. He is the. It says twice. He refers to him as the judge. He's judge and jury.
The leading cause of life and death, then, huh?
And he is the leading cause of life and death, and he is judge and jury. It's a lot for Yahowah to say of someone, and for the world to be completely ignorant of that someone.
They're intentionally ignorant. Right now, at this time, nobody's looking for you.
No, they aren't.
Nobody wants to admit that a goy is going to pull all this together.
But it's obvious it's a goy. He's a man from the sea. He is a Nakar, which is observant foreigner, and all the references are as such. He's a bull, and we're not saying this because we want a following. I don't. We moved to an island where there's nobody around us. We're not looking for a following. We won't. We have no donate button on the website at yahowah.com. Never taken money from anybody. In fact, I've handed it out, but I've never taken it. And there's no loyalty oaths or anything else. You come at your pleasure based upon the revelations of God's testimony, or not, and you can leave it any time with go your way. But the job's tough. I mean, the job's really tough. This role that I play as the Adam of Parah, you get slaughtered. The slaughter is of the body which you gladly give up to have your soul enveloped in light energy. But you get spit at and lied about, kicked around, denied. And yet you put in 14-hour days, 7 days a week for 30 plus years. So it's don't be envious of the job, but benefit from it. That's we're here to provide the benefits for those who are willing to listen, and we will ask nothing of those who benefit. Nothing.
It's really a job that nobody else could do. I mean, it's a job. It's your job. It's your job.
Yeah, there's no one else has even attempted any part of it, and you're out of time now. So
right
by default, that's I'm the only person that has even approximated any of the things that are said, and I've done all of them. And here we are, and it's not again to garner credit. God says all of this because He wants to garner your attention, so that you can benefit. And everything we offer is for your benefit, absolutely free, no strings attached. It's yours for the taking.
And yet there's a group that tries to take that away, even though they completely rely on
yes, they do. Yeah,
this being your job. they want to take that away. Yeah. It's amazing.
There is just no accounting for really how moronic people can be.
Oh,
they're just
he's
really
the guy. He's completely wrong, but he's the guy.
You just can't. You can't make this up. I mean, it's not.
You can't. You can't make it up. But that group's run by a psychopath, certified psychopath, and and they have 50 followers, and typical world of social media, 3/4 of them are bots and phony accounts. So you got 10 people that are paying attention to them that are equally deceived. So it's not. It doesn't mean much, except they like to hashtag my name to disparage me with things that I taught them. It's pretty silly. But anyway, that's the nature of humanity. That's why God said that I don't like humans very much. That's why there's so few people. That's why the number of the final remnant is going to be in the 1,500 range out of 15 million Jews. And the fact is that as God's chosen people and the purpose of all of this, they're going to fare far better than Goyim are going to fare. So it's going to be a tough 7 years to get her done, but we will finish the job. You can be assured of that. Most people aren't going to like the job we do. Mm-hmm. But so long as God does, that's okay. All right. Thank you, Noah. From one Noah to another. Thank you.
Let me put in a shameless plug for Perry and Kirk and I.
Yes.
To look out for the painter, the musician, and the mathematician.
Okay, and when is the debut going to be?
We need to work that out. So I'm just going to say coming soon for now.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I really do love, and I hope it becomes live. We can link to it now because we've got the link and it's up, but we're just not live from the site yet. But the that family page where it is last in, first up, and it's presented with the faces who are delivering that program, and it's the family page is inclusive of everybody who is engaged except me. And I think it's absolutely spectacular. It's my favorite thing that we have ever done is to watch the family strut its stuff. And you know, in most cases, it's crawl before you walk and walk before you run. And it's not easy to do. You have to be prepared. It doesn't come naturally. And there's this freeze up moment when you turn on a camera and lights. And Kevin's doing a nice job of editing, so it makes everybody look reasonably good. But ultimately, it's going to be too big a job for Kevin to be able to edit people's shows that we're going to have to do what we're doing now, which is you turn on the lights, you turn on the mic, you turn on the camera, and you say, ready to go live. And we live stream this to 8 to 10 different social media accounts, and we don't look back, and we have never edited a single moment of any show. It's as real as it gets. Yeah.
You know, never in time has there been a time like this where there's so much information available. You know, so it's pretty.
And we're learning that right now at a prodigious rate. We're learning more now in a year than we learned in a decade, and maybe even more in a month than we had previously learned in a year. So the learning curve has gone up exponentially, and a lot of that is because of the foundation that we have built. A lot of that is because of the fact that you really have to come to know what really love the terms that Yah uses and the metaphors that he uses, and then you recognize them and make connections between them. But part of it's the moment we're in. We are in the time right now where we have to know who we are, because we're building the library for the millennial celebration of Sukkah. We're building the basis that will return to witness from the Temple Mount. We're building the team that is going to be delivering that fruit and managing this mortal remnant and managing the upcoming Towrah harvest. So, you know, we have a lot of responsibility now, and everybody does. And this kind of a program with a musician and an artist and a mathematician walk into a winery or a studio or a classroom, that's doing the job. That's how we finish the job. And this is why we're spending most of our time now building and edifying the resources on the yahowah.com website. So thank you so much. I enjoyed doing the program. We'll do another Luminaries from Ruth later today. Bye.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yah on our next podcast.